I woke up to a sound I'd never expect on my ranch. The heavy, chaotic thunder of hooves, the ripping, papery sound of fresh alfalfa getting chewed up like it owed somebody money, and standing on the other side of my fence smiling like she'd just read the funniest line in a joke book was the HOA president. Yeah, the woman who acted like she owned the whole neighborhood had decided my pasture was now her personal buffet, and that was the morning my patience finally snapped. It's funny in a way, you grow up expecting storms and coyotes and the honest kind of trouble that leaves marks you can fix with sweat and time, but you don't expect a person in a blazer and sunglasses to walk onto your life and start stomping around talking like the rules were written to benefit her lunch break. Yet there she was, arms folded, chewing a piece of gum and telling me the HOA approved communal grazing. If arrogance had a zip code, she'd live there. Act 1. The Spark. I step onto the porch with my coffee and it's like a bad movie. Set. A dozen cows pushing through the alfalfa I planted, that spring clods of dirt thrown up the fence post, splintered like somebody used it as a doorstop. My stomach did that cold twist, that feeling when something you built with your own hands is being eaten by somebody else's sense of entitlement. I've tended that ground for years, the seed of it is in my fingertips, and watching it matted down by hooves felt like a personal betrayal. She shouts across the fence, bright as a toothpaste commercial. "Morning, Hope. You don't mind the HOA says this land isn't being put to good use, so I let my cattle graze." I remember thinking, are you for real? I pointed to the deed I had in my pocket, the map, the pin, the math, and she waved me off with that. Bring it up at the next meeting line like it was a comfortable chair she could sit in until I got too tired. That was the moment when the fight stopped being about grass and started being about respect, about boundaries. So I did what any livestock person might do. At first I got in there, clapped hands, waved arms, tried to coax the herd back toward her boundary, only to realize she'd drilled a hole through the fence and led them in deliberately. I took photos, I videoed the damage, I called every HOA number I could find, a lot of busy signals, a couple of sympathetic voices, and one too calm reply, "Karen has discretion over unused spaces." That's when it turned from a neighborly squabble into something uglier, a power play. Act 2. The counterpunch. I'm not a litigator, but I know my land and I know what's mine. I drove to the county records, pulled a certified copy of the deed, and walked back onto the property, feeling like a man with proof in his hand and vinegar in his gumption. The plot twist first arrived like a bad smell at midnight. My security cam catches a pink jacket in the moonlight scattering feed into the pasture, leading her herd like a Pied Piper. The pink jacket. Yeah, that was Karen, late-night saboteur. Suddenly, this wasn't just arrogance. It was active interference, deliberate trespass, and proof she'd been staging the problem to paint me as the antagonist. That's when I realized she wasn't acting alone. There were board members who saw the world through her lens, or were too comfortable to question her neighbors who'd let their thumbs hover above the like button of silence while she ran the show. You ever notice how people cheer for the loudest voice until somebody else gets in the ring? I was about to get loud. Now here's where the story gets cinematic, because what do you do when the system moves slow and somebody is running wild on your land? You gather evidence, you patch the fence with steel, you call a lawyer, but you also remind the trespasser that not everything they touch is fair game. I had a sanctuary on the back 40 license documented, where I'd been part of a conservation program raising and training wolves as part of a rehabilitation effort. They weren't monsters. They were beautiful, disciplined, and under control, and I knew how to use presence without harm. Some of you might cringe, wolves, and yeah, I can hear you, but let me be clear, they stayed behind their fence. They were trained not to attack livestock, and my plan was never to endanger animals or people. It was to be deliberate, to create a presence that would make invading someone's private pasture feel less convenient. The wolf's howl is a primal thing it carries, and sometimes a reminder that you're not the only tenant in a land can be the most persuasive kind of argument. I led them just to the edge of my property one afternoon while Karen was out meeting her HOA pals, a measured, controlled presence, and when Luna the Alpha let out a single low, long call, the effect was immediate. The cattle froze, ears up, stomachs dropping like theater curtains, and then they stampeded, not violently, just hard enough to clear the grass and head back where they'd come from. Karen arrived in a huff, red-faced, calling me reckless, threatening to call every authority under the sun. Animal control, the HOA, the sheriff, and I said, "Calm as plain water. My animals stayed on my land. Your cattle shouldn't have been here in the first place." That night the story got bigger, because Karen didn't stop. She came back at midnight trying to recreate the chaos, and that was the nail. I had cameras, timestamps, the deed witness statements from neighbors who quietly told me they'd had enough of Karen's management style. I took everything to a lawyer, and the court was the arena where the little tyrant might finally learn what accountability means. Act 3. The resolution court day is a strange kind of theater. Polished floors, echoing shoes, the slow thump of a gavel, and Karen came in wearing her "I'm lawful and wrong" suit. Her attorney spun a tale about reckless behavior and dangerous animals, painting me as if I'd sprung wolves across the night to terrorize the neighborhood. But then Mike, my lawyer, put the footage up minute by minute. There was Karen under streetlights scattering feed into my pasture at midnight. There were photos of the broken post. There were certified copies of the deed with my name and parcel clear as a bell. The judge listened. The room thinned, and when the ruling landed, it felt like the long, slow breath you take after a run relief. The court found in my favor, damages awarded, costs covered, and a clear admonishment that an HOA president does not have license to trespass or to fabricate communal rights where none exist. The fallout was swift. Neighbors I'd thought were indifferent came up to me and said, "Man, glad you did it." A couple of board members quietly began to talk about leadership and ethics, and a vote to remove Karen from the presidency followed not long after. That moment, the gavel, the quiet in the room, the look on Karen's face when she realized the soapbox had been yanked, that was the satisfying end. Not because I love to see someone humiliated, but because the scales tipped back a little toward what's fair. The pasture got repaired, the alfalfa replanted, the fence reinforced, and life returned to the kind of ordinary rhythm ranchers know best. I sat with Luna by the enclosure one evening, the sun turning everything gold, and I felt that odd, deep satisfaction that comes from standing up for something that matters. But the story didn't stop at the win. The moral, the quiet late-night revelation that creeps up on you when the adrenaline fades was this: power, even under the label community, can be corrosive when it goes unchecked, and silence from neighbors is the lubricant that lets small tyrannies spread. It's easy to shrug and say, "That's not my fight," until the wall of someone else's fight keeps creeping toward your door. Standing up isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's paperwork and patience and telling the truth louder than the rumor mill. And yeah, there's the uglier lesson too. People will leverage institutions to cloak selfish behavior, and sometimes the only thing that brings fairness back is a stubborn combination of evidence, community, and when necessary, a well-timed howl that makes the smug remember they're mortal. You have to be careful, you have to be ethical, but you can't let fear of conflict turn into acceptance of theft. So here's the thing I want to leave you with, not a sermon, just a conversation starter. When someone in a small community uses their position to bully others, should the fix come from stronger formal oversight laws, tougher HOA regulations, external audits, or should it come from neighbors themselves banding together, speaking up, voting differently? Is the ballot box and neighborhood solidarity enough, or do we need rules that bite harder? If you've dealt with your own Karen, whether in an HOA at work or in some volunteer board, tell me what you did. Did you fight it, document it, drag it to court, or did you find another way? Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear where you're from, what happened, and whether you think justice looks like fines and rulings or like a community finally saying, "Not anymore." If you like this one, hit like, subscribe for more stories from out here on the ranch, and share your take. I read every single comment.
Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video.